everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So Bill Maher, come on down. You are the next contestant. So when devout and pseudo-edgy comedian, political personality, Bill Maher is not out there bashing and admonishing Christians and Muslims for being of a different religion, he can be found on his little engine that could. Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO. And just to make a point, atheism is a different religion. If Bill Maher is going to hold this stance that, well, Christians and Muslims are ridiculous, I would actually agree with him. If he's going to say they need to prove their religion, because if they're going to believe in those fantasies, they should prove that stuff. Fair enough. But unless you're being a hypocrite, which you absolutely are, you're held to that same standard. The only honest answer is, I have no idea. Anything else, whether you're falling on the side of, I absolutely know that there's a God and a Jesus above and a man lived in a fish, or there is nothing and this is all there is. The evidence doesn't support that, but whatever. You can have that belief, but just know that it's a belief and acting like you're certain about it, it's just dishonest. Whatever. When Bill Maher is not sticking his thumb in the Prophet Muhammad's eye, he can be found on Real Time. So yesterday, Bill Maher does a segment called Enablers, in which he excoriates Trump and some of his supporters. That essentially he's making the point enables Trump. Let's take a look.
Finally, new rule, if you get up every day and try to make Donald Trump's ludicrous and dangerous pronouncements sound normal and sane, you are an enabler. 20 years from now, when your kids ask you over a glass of Soylent Green, what did you do during the Trump years, Daddy? You don't want your answer to be, my job is to go on TV and pretend Trump didn't say what everybody just heard him say. That is an enabler, and that word is not a compliment. We've heard it a lot with celebrities. Elvis had his Memphis Mafia. Michael Jackson had a doctor who never said, gee, Mike, your nose just fell off again. Maybe cut back on the plastic surgery. Bill Cosby could not have pulled off 40 years of, let's call it extreme dating.
Oh, hey, guess what else couldn't have happened? Obama wouldn't have gotten $1 million that you gave him and turned around and murdered thousands of innocent civilians, 90% of which were completely innocent. And hey, guess what else wouldn't have been enabled? Hillary Clinton wouldn't have been able to cheat Sanders in that way. And guess what? If Hillary Clinton hadn't cheated Sanders, if you hadn't supported her, if you hadn't essentially pretended as if the Podesta emails did not have actual information in those emails, if you pretended that the DNC did not, in fact, cheat and defraud millions of people of their own party, you wouldn't have to be doing this ridiculous segment, because Donald Trump would not have been in this office.
Without various underlings who funneled women his way and paid them off, to say nothing of the guy who supplied the horse tranquilizers and never once said, wow, Bill, that is one nervous horse you have there. One of the great enablers of fiction is Max, the sycophantic manservant to the delusional Norma Desmond in the classic movie Sunset Boulevard, now a Broadway show, and especially timely because it's about an aging, unstable drama queen who is able to maintain a fantasy world because even though Norma Desmond is pure, around-the-bend, batshit nuts, like I say, timely,
let's talk about this fantasy world. Because, look, I agree with him. I think people are, for the most part, living in a fantasy world. But that assumes that he is not. Bill Maher is. You have to understand my point. It's the Rachel Maddow paradox. Or it's not even a paradox. It's the Rachel Maddow syndrome. He would get on this show, he would excoriate Republicans for all this stuff. I just don't remember having these shows with, you know, drone murders from Obama. I don't remember that at all. I don't remember that. I don't even remember the show where he comes and says, holy shit, this president passed the NDAA. He wanted the right to lock up American citizens indefinitely. I don't remember that either. I just don't remember the stuff. When he was attacking the press, locking up people for espionage, even though they were whistleblowing. I don't remember that either. I don't even remember when Bill Maher did a segment talking about how Obama saved the banks but let homeowners go bankrupt. I don't remember those segments. I don't remember those segments at all. At the very least, I don't remember them to the degree to which he does stories like this. In his mind, the Democratic Party is fucking awesome. Just like in Rachel Maddow's mind, the Democratic Party is fucking awesome. Reality disagrees with him.
She has Max there, and he keeps the real world far out of sight. In the plot, Norma Desmond is a faded movie queen, a silent film star of the 1920s, but now she hasn't worked in 30 years, but she still thinks she's big, because Max goes into the basement every night and writes fake fan letters to fool her into thinking the people still love her. Is that really any different than this guy pretending to have intelligence that backs up what his mad boss tweeted at 3 in the morning? Or the way Trump's handlers keep sending him to rallies where he only has to see the people who tell him he's doing great, just like it says on his hat. I'm sure last week when Trump's health care bill went down in flames,
hope and change. Hope and spare change. Enough. Now, if he's making this point that Trump failed and all this other stuff, and yeah, Trump is going to fail. He's going to fail miserably. There's going to be a horrible presidency. But the last guy failed too. What are your metrics? What are the things that you're using to make determination on whether or not Obama failed or passed? Because if you're going to make this case, you are supporting Obama full-throated. You're supporting Hillary full-throated. If you're going to take shots at this guy, which is fair game, why didn't you take shots at the other guy? I guess I'm making this point that one failure after the other. A Democratic president, Bill Maher made the point once before that Democrats for the most part do a better job at saving him money. He's right. He's right. Bill Maher is a very rich guy. Democrats do a damn good job giving rich people more money. I've made this point before. The Obama administration gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. That's called a failure. That's not a failure to Bill Maher, because Bill Maher is in that top 1%. It is a failure to the overwhelming majority of Americans, however. Again, 95% of the jobs created, part-time or contract. That is a failure. That's not a failure to Bill Maher, because he slings jokes for a living. Do you get my point? If you're being locked up for pot by an alcoholic cop, that's a failure. The president had the capacity to essentially, the pot-smoking president had the capacity to get rid of that particular regulation. He could have taken off Schedule 1 drug. Does Barack Obama full well believe that pot and heroin are the exact same thing? Does Bill Maher believe that pot and heroin are the exact same thing? Does this consummate pot smoker, Bill Maher, why doesn't he think that was a failure? Certainly, Obama had the authority to do it. He didn't need Congress, so you can't even use the apologetic response of, well, I mean, the Republicans, they were just blocking everything he did. He was so weak. He was just so weak, he couldn't do anything. He was powerless. He was powerless. He was just the president of the United States. He had the authority to do that without Congress. We also need to understand the ridiculousness of this, because it is kind of absurd. A president that had a history of pot smoking, prolific history of pot smoking, and look, I don't begrudge him for it. Pot should be legal. All drugs should be legal. Anytime you create a regulation about a drug or something like that, you're just going to create a black market for it. It's far easier to actually legalize it and regulate it. My point is, in this particular situation, you have a president who smoked pot for God knows how long, was a fabulous pot smoker at that. African American, far more likely to be locked up, spending more time in jail for those type of crimes. A bill or a letter came out, interview, by somebody who was in Nixon's administration. And he makes this point, that for the most part, the reason why the drug war started was to lock up blacks and liberals. Obama hits both of those buttons, black and liberal, and a pot smoker. He still didn't do anything about it. The most that he could muster himself to do, that he could get out of bed, that he could come up with the gumption to do is nothing. Nothing at all. I'll let the states handle. And people was like, oh wow, that's great. They applauded him for doing nothing. They applauded him for doing nothing. Including this guy right here. He wants to say Trump's a failure. Completely gives this other guy a pass. I'm amazed by this. I'm absolutely amazed by this.
He was surrounded by enablers who all nodded when he said, I'm still bigly. It's Congress that got small.
One last thing. He made mention to the healthcare bill, talking about Trump's bill was going to fail. Trump's bill was going to fail, and Trump's bill was going to hurt a lot of people. But let's not pretend that Obamacare was also not going to hurt a lot of people. This annoys me. I get sick of this hypocrisy. Every time I turn around and look, there's somebody who's saying something, being a goddamn hypocrite. Bill Maher, do you earnestly believe that the Obamacare was a success? Within 3 or 4 years, or 5 years, however long, prices were going up by 50% in some places, in other places 20-something%. Are you seriously telling me that you full well believe that you're going to come out your mouth and attack one healthcare plan that was crummy while defending another healthcare plan that was also crummy? Was it a failure, Bill Maher? Joke man. Ultimately, you had a situation where you had a Democratic president. Democrats have been trying to pass healthcare for what, 40, 50 years. Democratic president. He has House, Senate, and the presidency. Filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. The healthcare bill that he comes out with is a Republican bill from the Heritage Foundation, essentially Romney Care. In addition to passing this crummy healthcare bill, he lied, joked Hillary Clinton during that particular primary, saying that she was crazy for trying to institute a mandate, gets in office, puts in a mandate, says we're going to have this thing where these debates and these talks are going to be open. Those debates and talks were not open. They were behind closed doors. In addition to protecting drug companies. He protected drug companies. Part of the problem with healthcare is cost. We pay 4 times more than anywhere else in the world. If you're not going to deal with cost, if you're not going to look at healthcare and say, okay, I'm going to function at the behest of the American public, of the people who believed in me and the people who put me in this office. If you're not going to say that, then who are you functioning for? If you're going to leave a private industry that has no goal, no purpose, other than to suck X amounts of millions of dollars out of the pockets of Americans for no value whatsoever. If you as a Democratic president is going to leave that in office, if you as a Democratic president are going to say, yeah, I'm going to not allow Medicare to negotiate with drug companies to lower the prices. Guess who said they were? Donald Trump, which is mind-blowing. No, yes, he was going to hurt a lot of people with their health care bill. But even Donald Trump had the sense enough to realize that you shouldn't give a blank check to drug costs. Yes, the federal government is massive. The federal government spends a huge amount of money on medicine, health care. The federal government should be negotiating for lower drug costs. The goal of the federal government is not to protect the profits of their plutocrats and the people who are giving them money, their donors. The goal, at the very least in healthcare, was supposed to be healthcare. If you're going to be a Democratic president, you're going to pass a plan that doesn't cover everybody, leaving still millions of people uncovered. Still, millions of people in debt and poverty being hit with these massive increases, massive costs. How are you going to call that a success? How are you going to call it a success? It just seems as if a lot of these dialogues and conversations of this quote-unquote controlled opposition is pretty one-sided in its estimate and gives no context whatsoever to the overriding idea. Democrats are not your goddamn friends. Neither are Republicans. Me talking about one adds no glamour to the other. In this case, when Bill Maher makes these cases, he is directly attacking one consistently, while consistently giving the other one nearly a complete pass. At the very least, he does in no way excoriates them in the same way he excoriates the Republican Party, especially when they're doing some of the similar things. It's like somebody saying they despise Coke, but they love some Pepsi. It's crazy.
Trump has nothing but Maxes around him. Did you know that Devin Nunes once defended Trump by saying, "I think a lot of things he says, you guys sometimes take literally." Excuse me? We shouldn't take the President of the United States literally? Right, he's a poet. When he nukes Finland, it's a metaphor.
You believe Trump is going to nuke Finland? Let me ask you this. When the Russia thing came out, what side were you on? Were you on the side looking for evidence, looking for reality? Or were you on the side of the religious belief that believed, for the most part, that Russia attacked the United States and that Russia hurt dear Hillary Clinton? Bill Maher noted in a conversation, he was, I think he was on CNN or something, or they had him on a show. They had Lords on the show. But he says, Maher also brought up Russia, and Lord argued that Russia didn't influence the election because voting machines were not hot. Maher shot back, "Don't bullshit me." He said Russia clearly influenced the election by hacking them. Then releasing Podesta emails and releasing the tax returns would help clear some of the questions about Russia associations. So you don't really care about the speeches that Hillary Clinton had. You don't really care about what was in those particular Podesta emails, even though those Podesta emails were showing massive amounts of corruption, massive amounts of fraud. And you don't even really care that you're being an enabler by supporting somebody who was having massive amounts of corruption and massive amounts of fraud. In this particular case, you have no evidence, at least no clear evidence, that Russia hacked this election. And beyond not having clear evidence that Russia hacked the election, the evidence that was out is being rolled away. The Democrats that you've enabled by towing this line, this Maddow line, this Donna Brazile line, this Nancy Pelosi line, this Bernie Sanders line, about this red menace attacking our country. Some of those guys who put the story out are backing off of that story. The people who are doing the investigations on it, the people who are in FBI or whatever, even some that were in the Obama administration, are backing off the story. Maher, Maddow, Brazile, Pelosi, all these guys are Democrats. All these guys have a vested interest in not backing off that story. They are humiliated that the candidate they supported lost to reality show hosts, the same one that he's on here bashing and calling ridiculous and stupid. He may be stupid. He may not be able to put a bunch of words together. He may be orange. He may be a reality show host. He's also the president of the United States because he beat the candidate that you yourself were supporting and you yourself enabled. Keep it real.
Super Christian Mike Pence, seen here cringing from an air kiss because you don't know how far syphilis can jump. Mike Pence conveniently forgot the famous line from the Bible, "Thou shalt not grabbeth thy pussy." When he gave Trump the cover he needed to survive Pussygate, as did Christian Jeff Sessions, who, when asked if he thought uninvited groping was sexual assault, said, "I don't know, it's not clear how that would occur."
So wait, is the argument that they're being hypocrites? Is that the argument? They're Christians. They call themselves Christians, and for the most part, they're still backing up Trump's line of grab him by the pussy and all this other stuff. Look, you can't be a Republican Christian, so let's be honest about that. Let's be very honest about it. Anybody who spent even 20 minutes with the Bible was very clear on Jesus' ideals. They were not any ideals similar to the Republican Party. Jesus would have despised Mike Pence. Jesus would have despised Paul Ryan. So bake that into the cake. Yes, those guys are being complete hypocrites. You are also being a complete hypocrite. The very act of this, the thing that you're doing here, your shtick, where you're attacking these guys, that's fine. What you're saying is not necessarily wrong. But again, it's this thing of, I am only saying this one thing towards one side because that's where my interest lies in attacking. By definition, you're being a hypocrite. You're not revealing information to your audience to give your audience proper context on how shitty both of these parties are. It's not just one. It's not just the other. It is both. You are enabling the Democratic Party to function in the way that it functions. That party who you're supporting can't even tell you what they stand for. They can't tell you what they stand for. I suspect they know. They just don't want to say it aloud. Over and over again, luminaries of the party. What do you stand for? Up to this point, the only thing they've stood for was Russia. I've explained a lot of this stuff before. The whole marijuana thing, the whole expanding wealth inequality, the whole attacking journalists, one thing after the other. The whole murdering civilians, the whole drone wars. He talked about nuking Finland. Obama's been killing Muslims in 8 different countries without congressional authorization at all. That is illegal behavior. When is Bill Maher going to do several monologues on that? That's pretty goddamn serious, right? You have a president of the United States that's asserted the authority to murder civilians. You have a president of the United States that asserted the authority that without congressional approval, he can go into whatever country he wanted and murder the citizens of that particular country. You had a president that asserted the right to even kill Americans without any authorization from any other branch of government, including the judicial branch. Those seem pretty serious to me. I think murder is pretty damn serious. I think ignoring rule of law, particularly for a body that is working under the rule of law, is pretty damn serious. Explain to me, Bill Maher. Explain to me. Why aren't those things important to you in the same way that these things are important to you? Why does one get a pass? Why does murder get a pass? Why doesn't the things you want in regards to pot around the country get a pass? I mean, he is locking up a lot of people dealing with pot. I don't understand why these things get a pass. I don't understand why all these failures get a pass. Tell me, Bill Maher, why do you think Trump got elected? Don't tell me Russia. That's a religious belief. Why do you think Trump got elected? Do you think it had anything to do with the failures of the previous administration? The guy who called for hope and change and did nothing of the such. And then put up another candidate that you supported that was corrupt as corrupt can be. That is not my opinion. That is a flat fact. Those emails that you're lying about, saying that Russia pushed out. If you really looked at those emails, those things were factual and real information about what was going on within the party that you yourself supported. Everything from defrauding millions of people were stomping for Sanders. Everything from taking money to give weapons to places that she herself considered terrorist states. I don't understand why these things are going to pass. I don't understand how in the same breath you could say, well, they released those goddamn Podesta emails, but we need to release Trump's tax returns also. You don't see any kind of hypocrisy in that statement, in that one sentence. All right. So if somebody released Trump emails, or they released his tax returns, are you saying that you would not look at those emails and those tax returns? Let's say they released those emails and they hadn't released Podesta emails. Do you earnestly believe that Bill Maher would have said, yeah, we shouldn't look at Trump's tax returns. We shouldn't look at Trump's emails. Because that wouldn't be fair. That wouldn't be right. You know the truth. That doesn't pass the sniff test.
Sure, Jeff. It really depends on the circumstance. Like for example, if you saw a pussy about to fall off a cliff, you'd want to be able to grab it without political correctness getting in the way. Enablers Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway are the West Wing's flowers in the attic. A lunatic locked them up, and now they're crazy too.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
Well, that's pretty good ass-kissing, but Prince Priebus, you can do better, can't you?
Well, I think the president's 100% correct, and he hits the bullseye in that tweet like he often does.
Exactly. Because who can picture Trump and not think accuracy in tweeting? And have you seen this psycho, who will not only blindly repeat anything Trump says, no matter how crazy?
We know for a fact you have massive numbers of non-citizens registered to vote in this country.
But is such an ass licker, he licks the ass of people who lick Trump's ass.
I do want to say that Sean Spicer, as always, is 100% correct, and that what he said is true and important, and I agree with it.
Okay, that is funny. I gotta be honest. I think Bill Maher is funny. He's a fucking funny guy. But let's also be clear. This level of hypocrisy is a problem. I mean, it lacks a certain degree of integrity. It's nice to attack people who you don't particularly like. Attacking people who are politically similar to you, who are doing things that are bad and that are hurting people, is a little bit more difficult to do. But it is something that's required. In regards to repeating stuff, regardless of whatever it is, you're out here towing this Russia line. Where's your evidence? Where is your evidence? If you're hitting him for saying, well, this guy just repeats anything that comes up, the Democratic Party has been pushing this Russia line for 3 months. Even a shallow understanding of politics full well gets across the point that the Democratic Party is just talking about Russia because they don't want to talk about why they lost that election. It is embarrassing to them. The night Hillary Clinton lost that election, she didn't even come out to give a closing speech. It was embarrassing. It probably hurt. She probably was drowning her sorrows like Maddow in liquor and corn chips. That being said, if he's going to toe this line, if he's going to red bait, if he's going to talk about the Red Scare and how Russia reached into this country and choked the hell out of democracy, preventing Hillary Clinton, who choked the hell out of democracy when they cheated Sanders, then you need to be a little bit, you need to have a little bit of evidence. You need to give me a little something. Now, the DNC didn't even give the FBI their servers. The place, CrowdStrike, that did review those servers have been getting pushback from all sorts of intelligence sources for misreading information, for not understanding the information which they were reading, and for having to go back and change information because they were getting that information so massively and ridiculously wrong. Tell me, if the planks of your story about Russia influencing this election are falling away, what does that say? Are you going to continue with a story, clear and adamant and certain, that Russia did something to us, even though the evidence that you have to show that is non-existent and absent, and depends on a company that was using faulty data, using faulty methods in order to accomplish that data, dealing with an organization that did not want to give the actual investigative body of this country access to try to determine what actually happened. All right, but I know it's all been
without these professional liars and deniers, There's no Trump. It takes a village to help a man-child stay in power. And the excuse, I'm just doing my job, is starting to sound an awful lot like I was just following orders.
Ooh, Hitler. Trump's a Nazi. All right. You gave Obama $1 million. Obama got in office. And again, like I said, attacked 8 Muslim countries. He was having shadow wars in several African nations. He was literally paying terrorist organizations to undermine the Syrian government. That man-child that you're talking about, that maniac, that bringer of the apocalypse, how do you think all those powers got into that office? Explain that to me, Bill Maher. The guy who you were supporting, your president, consistently accrued more and more powers into that office, and even delegated powers to Trump by allowing the NSA to pass information to other departments of the government, allowing rules to lock up American citizens without, for the most part, due process of law, including using military on U.S. soil. If you're going to make a Hitler reference, you need to be fair about that Hitler reference. For the most part, you're supporting somebody who killed, murdered thousands of civilians. 90% of many of those strikes were civilians. 90%. In no way did Obama, knowing that he was murdering civilians, stop Obama from murdering civilians. It did make him a better liar about it. He would come out and say, well, we don't have that many civilian casualties. What Obama wasn't telling you was that anybody who was 16 years or older was fair game to be murdered. If you were a child, 16 years, you were fair game to be murdered by Obama. Explain to me, Bill Maher, if you're going to use a Hitler reference, this idea of world conquest, a president that makes the decision that he can invade any particular country and murder any particular person without any other authority from any other legislative body. In pursuant to that, using flying killer robots to target people, to use the law of the land to prosecute people who's showing the illegality of that particular administration, who's using surveillance techniques to literally surveil the entire country, everybody. Screw the Fourth Amendment. Who needs it? I'm Obama. I can do this. I don't need anybody's permission to do this. If you're going to make a reference like that, shouldn't there be some level of reality associated with where you're standing and who you're supporting before you make that particular reference? This is utter madness to me. It really is. Because ultimately, you had one president who was working at cross purposes with democracy. You had a guy who was enabling that guy to work cross purposes with democracy. At no point were people going out to protest and speeches. At no point did you have these people rallying at the airports to essentially protest and scream and yell and show their moral outrage at Trump keeping Muslims out the country while Obama was actually killing those same Muslims. I miss your outrage. I don't quite get it. Or at the very least, I don't get the selective outrage. And wait, you can use it for one party, but not use it for the other. The problem is integrity. The problem is integrity. Or maybe, to be more specific, lack thereof. For the most part, it's not that your opinion is bullshit, if we're being honest. Now, it's not so much that you're wrong. It's just your incentive is to treat things that are, for the most part, nearly equal, to give them different values based upon political alignment. So you may have somebody who you're kind of close to politically. That person could be doing something that's absolutely ghastly. You may even disagree with the things that that person is doing. I don't necessarily think you think it's awesome that Obama was murdering 90% of civilians in those countries, or that he was trying to undermine the Syrian government, that he was going to prolong a war. Whether or not you thought it was awesome that Hillary Clinton was going to put a missile defense shield in Syria with the idea of potentially shooting down a Russian jet, starting a goddamn nuclear war. This is your party. This is the party you're supporting. Part of these guys are asking, hey, was an attack that never took place, that we are not really sure happened from Russia, constitute an act of war? Your position, your party's position, is literally in direct alignment with Dick Cheney, who essentially said, well, yeah, Russia hacking us is an act of war. Where's your evidence? I need your evidence. If you're going to say that, if you're going to literally foment a war against the nuclear nation, I need your evidence. If you're going to be an enabler for a party that's doing this, if you're going to toe the line, I need your evidence. Because that's a pretty big damn deal. I need more than just your assertions and your religious beliefs. This is an issue of integrity. It's an issue of integrity. Newsflash. The other side isn't buying it. They're not buying it. You're talking to yourself. All these clapping seals, they're just like you. They're just hacks for the most part. They're hearing you say something. They're hearing you say something funny. They're seeing you attacking the other side. They clap. They laugh. But you know what the other side is doing? The other side is talking amongst themselves in a similar bubble. And in that, they're showing your hypocrisy. They're showing how you gave all of these other things a pass. They're laughing at you. They're angry at you. They think you're full of shit. Because in that specific case, you are full of shit. Now, mind you, this doesn't stop them from doing the same thing. Those people would also go to Hannity or a rally, and they'll listen to all that. And again, they'll be clapping seals. And they will also be full of shit hacks. The issue and the problem is integrity. You can never cross the divide. And not just cross the divide. The way you function creates division. Literally. You're coming from a position where you're attacking somebody else, but don't have the integrity to attack your own side with the same fervor. If you can't excoriate a mass murdering war criminal who is illegally going into other countries, murdering civilians, then what can you excoriate? What can you excoriate? Meaning, if you can't take something as serious as that and make a significant issue out of it, and same way you're making a significant issue out of all this stuff, where is your integrity? I'm in the dark on where your integrity is. I don't see it. What I see is somebody who's functioning as a shield for the Democratic Party, who has a talent for comedic action, a joke man, somebody who can throw out a joke, awesome timing, funny as hell. And yet, be completely blind to the things that his particular party, the party that he chose allegiance to, is doing. Even when those things are probably against things that he himself believes in. Just because you're politically aligned with a particular party in one way, doesn't necessarily mean you need to support that party in every other thing that they're doing. If you want the benefit of the doubt for other people, meaning people who are not necessarily reflexively in your camp, if you want their benefit of the doubt, then you need to be honest. You need to have a fair amount of integrity. Whether those people believe you or not is besides the point. If they're listening to you, at the very least, you have your foot in the door. You have the chance to make a case. Do you honestly think doing shit like this over and over again while giving the other side that dumps the fire of the Democratic Party a pass is going to convince anybody else on the other side that they should listen to you, that you may have a point, that the things that you're saying may actually be accurate and may be getting at something? They're going to reflexively ignore you. They're going to pretty much close the door. You're not going to get anything through. You're not going to bring anything over to your side. And not just not bringing it over to your side. The very act and the way that you function is going to create division in a particular society. That creates, in many respects, this society. Or the divide that's in this society. It starts with integrity. Bill Maher is funny, but Bill Maher is part of the goddamn problem. Unless you can deal with both of these parties, honestly, unless you can look at both of these parties and say, okay, these guys are a problem. These guys are causing division in society, and these guys are preventing us from actually addressing real and substantive issues. Nothing changes. The division persists. The problems remain intractable. If you're going to admonish one, you need to admonish the other, particularly if they're doing similar things. That is a problem. That is a problem. And I'm noticing when you're looking at either Fox News, MSNBC, when you're looking at many of these shows, you find the situation where, because one side functions just by nature, just by the way they operate, as a hypocrite, that right off the bat, they're ignored by other people, any other side, or any other camp, or the other people who identify with a particular brand, or party, or culture. That's a problem. It creates division. If you're functioning with a level of integrity, if you don't have any allegiances to any particular side other than honesty, your values, and honest appraisal of reality, that gets you in the door. This just creates division. Tighten up, dude. Again, I think Bill Maher is absolutely funny. By the same token, certainly, he's in the dark. And at the very least, he's giving somebody a pass that should not be getting a pass. Or I should say he's giving a party a pass that damn sure should not be getting a pass. So, alright guys. If you like the videos, feel free to like, comment, share, support the channel on Patreon. And of course, Facebook, Twitter, blah, 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 blah. Alright guys, have a good one. And one more thing, guys. I do focus a lot on people who call themselves liberals. I firmly believe you should sweep around your own front door first. I earnestly, fervently believe that if you're going to make a difference, and if you're going to try to bring the public over to your side of thinking, what is your objective? My objective is pretty clear. We need to get past this political divide. We need to get past these parties bickering back and forth. We need to get past these parties. Period. Anything that is functioning at the behest of the parties, whether it's towing out a line that's completely ridiculous because it doesn't necessarily address the other side, if it's being just a hypocrite by nature, it is a problem. It needs to be exceeded, and it needs to be named as such and acknowledged as such. If I'm hitting lefties, and look, I hit both. I don't necessarily care. If they're doing something that goes against my value system, they're fair game. But if you notice, that value system has nothing to do with parties, which is kind of the point that I'm making. If you function with a level of integrity, you will get people over to your side. Not because they're going to agree with everything you say, but at the very least, they can look at you and say, okay, this guy's being earnest. He's not trying to blow smoke on my ass. And every show that he's doing is not about how bad the other one is. Implicitly making the other side look like it's perfectly okay. That's my point. That's why I do it this way. So, alright guys, have a good one.